Hey everybody, I wanted to make a video all about one of my favorite Beatles albums, Beatles for Sale. Beatles for Sale is, in my opinion, one of the most overlooked albums in the Beatles' entire catalog. And I think there's a number of reasons why it gets overlooked. I think because the Beatles just had so many amazing albums and were writing so many just unbelievable songs that there has to be an album that does get overlooked. And I think another really big reason why it gets overlooked is because this was recorded and released in 1964. 1964 was arguably the Beatles' busiest, probably most successful year because they conquered America, they toured America, they released A Hard Day's Night, their movie, which was a huge, huge hit. And then they also released this album as well. So it was almost like, because of all that success, one of those projects had to be, not all of them could be just top number one. And Beatles for Sale, of course, while it was very successful, I think it gets a little bit overshadowed by A Hard Day's Night, the movie and the album, and the Beatles tour of America. But what I think is important to remember are all the amazing songs on this record. To me, this is when the Beatles started to write a little bit more of their introspective songs, because you get songs like No Reply, I'm a Loser, Baby's in Black, a lot of kind of downbeat, a little more introspective songs. I'll Follow the Sun is on here, even though Paul, of course, wrote that a number of years previously, but they finished it up and put it on this album. And also, I think another reason, by the way, I just thought of this, another reason why this album kind of gets, I think, maybe overlooked a little bit is because there are a lot of covers on this record. But there are some of my favorite Beatle covers on this record. For example, Rock and Roll Music, the Chuck Berry song on here, is amazing. Beatles did it all live in one take, and John sings it in a great way. It's just one of my favorite covers on here. And they also do a Buddy Holly song, the only time they ever officially recorded, in the studio at least, a Buddy Holly song, and they do Words of Love, which is on here as well. So anyway, this is just one of my favorite records, and wanted to talk a little bit more about the different pressings of this album and the different pressings that I have. And currently, one of the albums, this is actually up on my new website, Needle Meets Vinyl. This copy right here is on there right now, and it sounds really great, but we'll get into that later. And another thing I want to do is, because I've had a lot of questions about Beatles for Sale lately, because I posted this one onto the website, and just general questions about different pressings of it. So I thought I'd get into that a little bit more right now. So, first and foremost, it was released in 1964, and probably as a lot of you know, the Beatles, around that time period, the only mix they cared about was the mono mix. They made stereo mixes as well for all their albums, but most of the time the band didn't care about the stereo mix whatsoever. Not until later on, like when it came to the White Album, and then obviously Abbey Road and Let It Be. But around Beatles for Sale time, it was all about the mono mix. So it was released in 1964, and this happens to be an original 64 release, and this is the mono version. And the interesting thing about this record, and I already took the record out, by the way, because it's kind of a hard one to get out, and I will show you. This was the first Beatles gatefold album. So when you open it up, it's got this cool gatefold. It's got this great picture of them playing in Washington, D.C., It's got this interesting photo of them standing in front of a collage. I think that's at the studios when they were filming A Hard Day's Night. That's in front of some mural. But what's interesting about this is the record comes out of this inside little jack thing right here. So that's why I've taken the record out already, because it's a real big hassle to take it out. But like I said, this is an original UK mono copy, and it's an early stamper. And what I mean by stamper, which is another thing I want to clear up. So a stamper is the actual, each record is made by an individual stamper, and that stamper, you can figure out which stamper it was by looking at the dead wax And the dead wax on a record. So you have a record, you have the label. I'm going to try to do this. And by the way, this record is totally beat up. So if you see me touching it a little bit more than I would normally do, it's okay. It's beat up. That's just how it is. But I'm happy to have it because it's an original. Anyway, continuing on here. So you got the label, right? Then you have right outside the label, there's a space where there's no music. But within that is some really key information. And for example, and by the way, you're not going to be able to see it on camera at all. It's almost impossible to do because I don't have that type of equipment. But this one, for example, you can see within there, it has a stamp and it says XEX 503-4N. So that's the stamper on side 1. Now side 2 is going to have its own unique stamper. And, well, actually I'm wrong. It has the exact same stamper, which is okay. And it also has other initials in here too. Like this one says LD, it's over there. And all of those mean something. Those either mean like the pressing plant it was made at. Also, obviously the stamper that we just talked about. So all of that is very important when it comes to sound, because each stamper has its own distinct sound and each record has its own distinct sound. So when it comes time to try to find the best sounding record of any album that you like, it's important to know about the stampers because certain stampers sound better than others. And even if you have a good stamper, just because it's a good stamper doesn't mean that the record was made at the top quality. Anyway, not to get too boggled down with like stampers and all that, but that's just a short, very short explanation of stampers. So anyway, this is an original UK mono copy of Beatles for Sale. Now, if this was in really nice condition, this would be worth a lot of money, but it's not in nice condition. It has a lot of scratches. It's very noisy. The spindle hole, which is this hole right here where my thumb is very, very worn. But I'm happy to have it because it's cool to have an original copy. This is how it would have been when Beatle fans got it, originally in 1964. And it actually sounds great. If you get past the surface noise, you can tell that sonically it's really, really a nice recording. And it does make me long to try to get an original UK Parlophone label release of Beatles for Sale, which I will do someday. But that being said, this is the big reason, this is a big question I've got from the website, is wondering if the record I have on my website is an original UK edition, and it's not. And the reason is because they're just so hard to find for a good price. And my whole point about doing my website is to have records that are while they're a little bit on the higher end, they're still affordable. And if I was going to have some of these on there, it would just be almost impossible to do because I'd have to get like at least 4 or 5 copies to figure out which one sounded better. And then I'd have to it would just be so just out of this world as far as price goes. So that's why I didn't go with these yellow Parlophone label, black and yellow original pressings. But there's good news because I'll put this back in its sleeve here. And we'll put him over here for now. Now, the good news is this. There have been so many reissues of Beatles for Sale and all the Beatles albums since they were released that there are amazing sounding ones out there, which I call the next best thing. So, first and foremost, what I will talk about now is, so that was the mono. They also released a stereo mix of Beatles for Sale, which I like a lot. I think it sounds great. Now, some of the early Beatle albums with the stereo mix don't sound that great to me. Like the stereo mix of With the Beatles is not so great because the vocals are all over on one side, instruments are all on one side for most of it, and it's just not very even listen, in my opinion. Beatles for Sale, the stereo mix is actually pretty good, and I actually prefer it, like I said, over the mono mix. So that's why the copy on my website right now is the stereo mix. And as I was just about to say, all these reissues. Now, I have a bunch of them here, and these are all ones that I used to find the best sounding version to put on the website. So, first and foremost, I have 3 of these pressings, which one of them happens to be on the website right now, but they're all from the Blue Box, which was released in 1978, the first Blue Box. It's the complete Beatles album collection of their UK albums. Released in 1978, and then I think it was released from 78 until like 81 or something like that. But the early Blue Box pressings sound really, really good. They were made from the original stereo master tapes, and they just have a great sound. And then, in my opinion, this is my opinion, by the way, it doesn't mean it's right, but to my ears and from what I've read and all that kind of stuff, they sound almost as good as the original Parlophone UK releases. That's just to my ears. Now, do they sound as good as the Parlophone ones? No, they don't, because those are, in my opinion, the top sound you can get, but they're almost as good. So, like I said, I had 3 of these to go off of, but then I also had some of these other ones from my own personal collection, and these are foreign releases. This is a Japanese release of Beatles for Sale, and this one sounds really good too. The one thing that it's lacking, in my opinion, is it doesn't really have a lot of low end that the Blue Box ones have. They have a good bass sound to them, which is really important because, as probably a lot of you know, if you've listened to Beatles for Sale, that it does seem to kind of lack a little bit of low end. A lot of the early Beatles recordings lacked low end. In fact, the Beatles themselves were very critical of the sound they were getting from EMI Studios and the engineers, and they were always saying, like, can we get more bass? We want more bass. And of course, eventually they did get a lot more bass when it came to like Paperback Writer and the Revolver album and all that kind of stuff. But before then, they were just stuck with whatever they got. So a lot of these early Beatles for Sale albums are lacking low end, but luckily later on, when it came time to remaster or repress these albums, they were able to add a little bit extra low end when it came to cutting the records. So anyway, this is a Japanese pressing of it, and like I said, this does sound really good, but it doesn't have quite the low end that these Blue Box ones had. Then, this is I believe this is a German, this is a German pressing of Beatles for Sale. And again, while this sounds pretty good, it doesn't sound quite as good as this Japanese pressing. By the way, I should mention that this is, I think it's the Flag series. Yeah. So this has the original, it's called the Obi strip here. And this is known as the Flag series. And like I said, it does sound really good, but just doesn't seem to be as good as the Blue Box. And same goes for this German pressing. Now the German pressing, I have some of the Beatle German albums are like my all-time favorite pressings, like Revolver and the White Album German pressing are just amazing, and they sound great. And while this one is dead quiet and sounds good, it just doesn't measure up to the other ones. So that's how I came to these. And like I said, I have one more of these as well. These are all from the Blue Box. And my other one is currently on loan to a friend of mine. But it came down to these 3. Pretend there's another one here. And this is the one that won out. Now, what's interesting about this one is that you can tell it's an earlier one. It's an earlier pressing because the earlier pressings had a little strip that it's hard to see probably on here. Actually, you can see it. So there's like a little strip that goes down here. And those are the earlier ones, at least from what my knowledge of it is those all seem to have earlier stampers on there. And for some reason, those earlier sounding ones have a little bit more bass, at least to me. So this is the one that's currently on the website, and this is the label, and it's dead clean. It's so quiet, which is really what you want out of any record, obviously, especially a Beatle record. You want it to be as clean as possible, and it just sounds really, really great. It's really crystal clear. And if you want to know more about how it sounds, go to the website, check it out. I wrote a whole write-up on this one. And it's a really, really, really just excellent sounding Beatles for Sale. And really, I have it targeted at not the Beatle obsessive like me, or probably like some of you, but for someone who just wants to either upgrade their existing Beatles for Sale copy, or maybe they're like me, they had like an original Parlophone, but it's really, really beat up, and they just want a really nice listening copy that's clean. This is the one for you. It's not too expensive. It's just the right, in my opinion, it's the right price. Because, yeah, it sounds great. And I took a lot of time to find the best sounding one and the cleanest one. And it just seems to work for me. And I think it would work for you too, if you want to upgrade your Beatles for Sale. So, anyway, that's my spiel on Beatles for Sale. And I hope that maybe it gave you a little bit more information on the album. And maybe, just maybe, if this seems to interest you, you'll go to needlemeansvinyl.com and check it out. And check out also, I've I've posted a lot of new records on there as well. A bunch of new stuff. Like I got Neil Young, Rust Never Sleeps, which sounds amazing. I put a Steely Dan Gaucho album up there. A Frank Sinatra, it's called The Concert Sinatra, which I found 3 sealed copies of. And I picked the best one out of those 3, and it sounds unbelievable. It's really, really great. So it's not sealed anymore, obviously, because I had to open it up, but it sounds excellent. So if you like Frank Sinatra, it's definitely worth checking that out. Also have an AC/DC Back in Black that I just uploaded there over the weekend. So yeah, things are kind of moving along here in my in this new adventure I'm starting on. And I have to say, by the way, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I know it's at this point it's just like a side thing where I'm, when I have some free time, I work on the website and I listen to all these different copies I've got of records and try to find the best one to post up there. But I have a lot of fun writing about the albums and researching them, and it's just kind of a wild thing because this is stuff, by the way, that I was doing before when I didn't have a website. So now it's like I have like an actual kind of like a purpose to do it. Instead of just being a total geek, I can be a total geek and put it to good use. So I'm happy to say that I'm having a good time doing it. And I got to say this, all of you that have placed orders, like I said before in my last video, it's so cool. I really can't believe it. Every time a new order comes in, it like blows my mind. Like, wow, this is so cool. Someone actually bought a record that I think sounds good and that I put a lot of time and love into, and they're going to enjoy it as well. So it's really, really cool, and I appreciate all of your orders. And by the way, all the orders that have been placed, let's see, before today is Wednesday, all the orders have been shipped by Monday. Unless you ordered, there were a couple orders yesterday on Tuesday. So those were shipped this morning. So as of now, all orders that have been put in by Wednesday have been shipped. So your orders should be coming to you very soon, and I look forward to all of you opening it up, listening to them, and enjoying them. And I really, really would appreciate if you'd let me know what you think. That's the most important thing, is that you enjoy the records. And yeah, I'd be very curious to know what you think of them. I think you're going to love them. Anyway, that's it for now. So that was a little bit of history, a little bit of backstory on Beatles for Sale. And hopefully it will, I don't know. Either you already have a copy of this and now you're going to go and listen to Beatles for Sale and enjoy it. Or maybe you'll go to my website and check out the copy I have on there. And even if you don't end up buying it, by the way, there is a lot of information on my website about Beatles for Sale. So you can go on there and just check it out, read it. And that's it. So, by the way, I don't want to make these too infomercially and like I'm doing a commercial and buy now. I'm not interested in doing that. I just care about these records, and I love the Beatles, and I know you do too. So really, it's more about the information. And yeah, so that's it. By the way, still looking forward to Abbey Road 50th anniversary coming out next month. Can't wait. And Yeah. So that's it for now, and we'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye bye.